pals, I'm here today a bit belatedly to talk about my most anticipated releases for the month of May. So some of these titles will already have come out and some of them are yet to come out. I didn't want to miss featuring them in this video because I think they all sound like brilliant new releases. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a recent Australian release. I thought I would mention this one first because I participated in Aussie April last month, as I know lots of you did as well, and I just uploaded my wrap up for the Aussie books I read in April. I'll link that in the cards above in case you haven't seen it. And this is one I really wanted to get to. I heard about this a couple of months ago, saw the beautiful cover and thought it sounded amazing. And that is Metal Fish Falling Snow by Cath. I'm sure you agree, the cover is phenomenal. I think this is this author's first fiction release. I know she was featured in the Growing Up African in Australia essay collection, which I've yet to read but really want to. And I think it sounds phenomenal. This is a YA novel that follows a young girl who, after the death of her mother, is cared for by her mother's boyfriend, so I guess like her stepdad, and he takes her on a road trip to her family, who she doesn't know. And they build this big bond through the road trip and like go through their grief together, and then she has to meet this family that she doesn't know and try and face that and like rebuild her life. And it says this is a beautiful coming of age story, which you know I love, that tackles lots of serious social issues, which I also really enjoy, and I just think this sounds wonderful. And sticking with absolutely beautiful covers, we have By Ash, Oak and Thorn by Melissa Harrison. You may recognise Melissa Harrison's name because she wrote All Among the Barley, which was a historical fiction novel which came out a couple of years ago, which I absolutely loved. So I've read 2 of her novels for adults. This is a novel for children, middle grade age group, and it sounds absolutely wonderful and the sort of thing I would have just been in love with as a child and still will now as an adult. So we follow these 3 ancient beings who live in the woodland, and they wake up from their winter hibernation to find out that the ash tree they live in has just been destroyed. And so they set off on this adventure, and they're helped along the way by lots of wild animals to try and like save their homeland. And I believe this is going to be a series, and I think the next one is actually coming out later this year, so they just look and sound beautiful and I'm very intrigued by them. And we actually have an ash tree in our garden which is precariously close to the house. Every time there's high winds I cannot sleep because I'm terrified it's going to come smashing through our windows. But I refuse to take it down because, well, number one, it's a native tree to this country, and ash tree dieback means that you should try and preserve like ash trees where you can that don't have ash tree dieback, which ours doesn't, luckily. And so yeah, we have an ash tree, and I've been very worried this spring, checking it every day to see if the leaves are growing, because all the other leaves come in earlier than an ash tree, but it's okay guys because it's just got its leaves in the last couple of days. So yeah, I have a special place in my heart for ash trees because I feel an intense responsibility for the one in our back garden. So there's a little anecdote for you. Next book. And then we have 2 short story collections, the first one being Milk, Blood, Heat by Dantiel W. Moniz. I've heard great things about this one. I've seen quite a few people just haul it, and I've also read a couple of really positive reviews on Instagram. I think it sounds like the sort of short story collection I could love. Now, when I look into short story collections, I am much more interested in the bit at the bottom of the blurb where it tells you what the themes of the collection are and what the author's writing style is than I am by the blurb where it gives you like a summary of a few of the stories. So if you are more interested in the summaries, of course feel free to go and look those up. But this one says it's set in the modern world but focuses on the ancient essences of people. I think this one's very focused on the body and desire and sex and love. And it says that the author contemplates human connection, race, womanhood, inheritance and the elemental darkness in us all. I think that sounds brilliant, and I obviously can't wait to get to it. And the next one is The Rock Eaters by Brenda Peynado. Again, another brilliant cover. And this is a short story collection which is a bit speculative, fantastical. I think it has elements of fabulism and magical realism. And it says the author uses all those writing styles to explore like modern day social issues. So I think there's a focus on the class differences between first generation immigrants and immigration in general, racism, and it says in all the beauty of the language she looks at our flawed and amazing world. So again, I think that sounds excellent, can't wait to read it. And then we have a nature-based memoir, which is something I love, and I'm always on the lookout for nature-based memoirs by women because they're few and far between. And this one is called Earth by Rebecca Schiller. So this author, when Anne bought a small plot of land which she decided to live as a small holding, and it said that around that time she was starting to have somewhat of a mental breakdown, and she used the land and working on the land to try and work through that. And what I find particularly fascinating are a couple of different things. One is that we follow her through a full year of the seasons, which is something I really love. I love the change in seasons, and I love all the different plants and animals you see at different times of year, so I think that'll be really lovely. But the other is that she has a particular interest in the history of her land as pertains to the women who have lived or worked on the land, which again I think is something that's really important. Lots of nature non-fiction is written by men. It doesn't have much of a focus on women or their involvement in the natural world at all, so I'm always really interested to read books that do have a focus on women's involvement with the natural world. And it says that towards the end of this year, on this small holding, she gets a life-changing diagnosis and then the global pandemic starts. So yeah, I think this is going to have lots of really interesting social commentary as well as just beautiful nature writing, and I have this one on NetGalley, so I'm hoping to read it very, very soon. And now we're on to the novels that are coming out in May that I'm excited for. And the first one is The Parted Earth by Anjali and Enjeti. This one sounds phenomenal. So this is in two perspectives, different characters, different timelines, different locations. So we open in New Delhi in 1947 and we're following a 16-year-old girl as she experiences the havoc that the partition of India has on her life, and a boy she's in love with has to flee to Pakistan in order to be safe with his family, and that like forever changes her life and she eventually flees the subcontinent. And then more closer to present day, we're following the granddaughter of that woman as she lives in Atlanta in the US, and she's trying to look into who her grandmother was and find her and to try and unravel the history of her family and all these like secrets and buried things that people haven't spoken about. I really want to learn more about the petition, and mainly I'll do that via non-fiction, but I also like to obviously read fiction about all sorts of different events, and I just think this one sounds amazing. I really love books that are focused on, or books, films, fiction, non-fiction, whatever, that are focused on the effects that our ancestors' decisions, or not even decisions, but situations they were forced to be in, usually because of colonisation and empire, and how that has affected people in contemporary times, and how it's super convenient and easy for privileged people who haven't been affected by those things to say, God, you know, it's 2021, like you can't keep saying that things that happened all those years ago affected you in the present, when actually, of course they have. So yeah, I think this one sounds really interesting, very much looking forward to reading it. And then we have Before the Ruins by Victoria Gosling. This one sounds great and I'm very excited to read this. I think this could be a really compulsive and just super fun read. So this has been blurbed by Sarah Waters as like an excellent new like gothic novel. She says it's filled with menace, which sounds great. So we are following a woman who in the present day gets a phone call from her friend's mother saying he's gone missing, we don't know where he is. And it forces this woman to look back into their past and like look at all this secrets and betrayal that she doesn't want to think about anymore. So back when she was a teenager and she was finishing school, her and a group of her friends went to a local manor house and became friends with the really rich young boy who lived there. And they somehow got embroiled in reenacting the theft of a necklace that happened at their house 50 years earlier, and that sort of reenactment led to shit going down. It sounds great. It says this book is all about like decades of betrayal and resentment and secrets, and I can't wait to dive into this one and probably dislike everybody and trust nobody, but that sounds great to me. And then another one I have via NetGalley and I hope to read very soon is Fault Lines by Emily Itami. In this we follow a Japanese housewife. She's happily married with 2 children and she lives in a Tokyo apartment. But it says she thinks if she has to spend an evening discussing the laundry with her husband one more time, she'll probably throw herself from the balcony. She then starts an affair with a local restaurateur and her life like completely changes. And she continues this affair, and it says the novel is discussing when you start to live these 2 lives, you have to choose between them. So I think this is supposed to be a bit of a bittersweet love story, and a little bit humorous and also probably quite dark. I really like the sound of it, and yeah, hoping to read it in the next few days. And then we have Revival Season by Monica West. This is a coming of age story about a young girl with a focus on feminism and faith. I mean, of course I want to read it. So we follow a 15-year-old girl who is the daughter of a really famous Baptist preacher. Every summer they travel through small southern towns so he can preach, and she witnesses an act of violence which makes her question everything she thought she knew. And then she starts to realise that she can heal people, which is something she's been told she can't do because she's a woman, and so it makes her start to sort of question everything. So yeah, I think this one sounds really intriguing. And then lastly, I heard Hannah from Let's Talk About Books Baby mention this one in a recent video she did about May and June anticipated releases, which I'll link in the cards above. Definitely go check it out. She has lots of amazing non-fiction releases mentioned in that video. So the one she mentioned that I immediately added to my own list is Catch the Rabbit by Lana Bastašić. So this is a sort of road trip book, which I don't actually think I've read that many of, seeing as it's like a super big theme in literature. So we follow a young woman who currently lives in Dublin, but she gets a phone call from her friend who says, "You need to come home, my brother's gone missing and we need to look for him." This is set in the aftermath of the Bosnian War, and so they think he could have gone missing during the warfare or like been killed. And so they take a road trip across the Bosnian countryside to try and search for him. And this bit of the blurb in particular really fascinates me. It says, "This book tells the story of how we place the ones we love on pedestals and then wait for them to fall off, how loss marks us indelibly, and how the traumas of war echo down the years." So yeah, I think this one sounds really intriguing. So those are all the books I am really looking forward to reading that are coming out in May. Let me know if there's any that you are really anticipating that I haven't included on this list, and also do please let me know if you like the sound of any of these ones and you will be reading them as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!